I watch Charlie Brown Christmas every year. It's one of the specials I consider mandatory viewing when the season comes along. I like Christmas specials and movies, so every year I make a list and watch some I've seen before and some new ones. Like this year, The Muppet Family Christmas became a new favorite. But the ones I've got to see every year are Tokyo Godfathers, It's a Wonderful Life, The Snowman, Arthur Christmas, and The Charlie Brown Christmas. This year, I watched it on Apple's streaming thingamabob, so I got to see their 4K restoration for the first time, which was a cool experience. It's not like The Simpsons on Disney where they smooth it out and it looks weird. It looked really crisp and clean, and I spent a lot of it looking at background details like the texture of the paint. But I also started thinking about how you would go about remaking the special, just as a thought experiment. Nothing's ever going to replace the janky charm of the original, with Charlie Brown going a little bit off-model in the middle a few times, the fantastic soundtrack, and all of those little line readings that I know by heart.
All I want is what I have coming to me. All I want is my fair share.
But what if? What if you had an infinite budget? For instance, what would Charlie Brown characters look like animated on ones? You know, like if it had smooth, expensive animation like the Iron Giant? What if you wrote Marcy and Peppermint Patty and Franklin into the special? Who would they be in the play? What extra business could he give them to do? What if you smoothed out some of the jank? Just some of it, like there are some things that are stylized on purpose, like Schroeder's piano magically producing different sounds. That could stay. But what if you fixed that one bit where there's a harsh cut in the middle of Linus and Lucy? Change the pacing on that one bit where Linus does a punchline to the audience mid-conversation and it doesn't quite make sense. You could even come up with a new shot to fill in that blank where they took out the Coca-Cola sponsorship. You guys knew about that, right? Anyway, while I was considering this, the special ended, and I saw that there was another special on Apple, Snoopy Presents for Auld Lang Syne. I'd seen a little bit of the new Snoopy show, and Who Are You, Charlie Brown, the half-documentary, half-special about Schultz and the Strip, and that weird Apollo 10 documentary with Jeff Goldblum. But this is the first proper Peanuts special since Happiness is a Warm Blanket 10 years ago. First holiday special since I Want a Dog for Christmas, Charlie Brown 18 years ago. And you know what? Well, you do, because it's in the title, but I really loved it. This special looks so pretty. The way it uses lighting makes it look unlike any other Peanuts animation, and it's great. They've got dust particles floating in the air in a bunch of shots, lens flares, Lucy can walk through light being cast into the dark. The only other thing it comes closest to is the Peanuts movie, but really, it looks more like Klaus. Mind you, I didn't think the animation of the other recent shows looked bad. They looked consistent with the specials and shows through the 70s and 80s, including the character design, where Auld Lang Syne's character design looks more like the strip. Besides the flat lighting, the Snoopy show had black outlines on the background, so everything stood out, where there's barely any outlines in the backgrounds of Auld Lang Syne, and the characters themselves have thicker outlines, so they stand out more. It's interesting, you'd be forgiven for thinking that this is reminiscent of Charlie Brown Christmas, but when you go back to it, most of its scenes have clear outlines on the background. No Peanut stuff has really done this before, apart from promotional stuff like Hallmark books maybe. And it's not quite the Iron Giant animated on ones look I was wishing for, there's a bit of tweened movements, but I'm not complaining, this special looks fantastic. I could definitely go for more specials looking like this. But it's not just the animation. I like how the special's written, too. It's focused on Lucy, which is great. I always loved specials focusing on characters other than just Charlie Brown, like She's a Good Skate Charlie Brown with Peppermint Patty, or I Want a Dog for Christmas with Rerun and Spike. Speaking of which, the B-Story's protagonist in Auld Lang Syne is Spike, who's one of my favorite Peanuts characters, so I loved that, and those sections did a really good job of communicating his story with no dialogue, without it straying too far into slapstick antics. For the rest of it, you could tell this special wasn't classic Peanuts writing because it followed a more typical story structure, where a lot of those specials are all over the place, ambling along without normal arcs. But I don't think it's a bad thing for them to change that. It still felt true to the characters, and there were lots, and I mean lots, of moments that genuinely made me laugh. Plus some deep-cut Easter eggs that even I, having read quite a lot of Peanuts, had to Google. And my god, tapioca pudding has gotta be one of Schultz's most cynical creations ever. I also have to compliment the voice acting. Isabella Leo as Lucy especially brought so much energy to her performance. She was really convincing and managed to get me on Lucy's side pretty quickly, which is very seldom what Lucy is for. I remember when Terry McGurran got cast as Snoopy for the Snoopy Show, it felt significant that they weren't going to keep using the old clips of Bill Melendez like the Peanuts movie did. But ultimately it seems like it was a good move. And secretly, I was just glad to see the Canadian conspiracy to take over all the iconic cartoon characters was still going strong. And we've got all Snoopy's siblings too. They're ours, you can't have them. So yeah, I thought this special was really nice. I've thought they should be making new specials for a while now, and with this first one, they've managed to exceed my expectations. So, I do hope they make more. Charlie Brown is pretty special to me, and it's nice to see new artists taking advantage of new technology to make it feel new and different and exciting. That's what Charlie Brown is all about. Christmas.